Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Hero Movie Podcast, your greatest source for superhero movie discussion in the multiverse. I am your host, Adam Portrais, and I'm joined by sweet Sean Kovacs from the internet.
Howdy.
And of course, Bruce Leslie.
I'm a prickly pear, and no one wants to go inside my head.
Oh, gosh. You want to talk about a fright fest, to be sure. And I'm sure there'd be some sort of weird little version of Bruce Leslie dancing around in there just trying to knock over.
It would be Chunky A dancing for Arsenio Hall. He's in there.
Chunky A. Oh, sir.
Oh, man.
Arsenio Hall's fat brother. Oh.
Yeah, he
so
makes me say out.
Spectacular pull.
Everyone under the age of 40 has just gone, what in the sweet... That's good stuff, man.
Like we said,
what a pull.
Sean explained it by saying another word that's nonsense to them, Arsenio Hall.
Yeah, I'll explain this craziness with more craziness that you won't understand.
Chunky A.
Let me make it clear. It's Estes Kefauver's brother.
But we are here yet again, and it is the top of the month. And as the top of the month, we do want to say a big, giant thank you to everyone who helps keep this show going over at Patreon.com. If you're one of those people over at Patreon.com/HMP, you know that you get the pre-show, you know you get the post-show, and you also get the Dinger Zone. You get to vote on something that we watch every single month. So, be like one of the 40 people that have supported us over on Patreon. These lovely, lovely people. But I do want to say top marks to our top donors over there at Patreon. Alex, Derrick, Matthew, and Tim. You guys are the best. And everyone else, thank you again so very, very much. Patreon.com/HMP. If you like what we're doing here and you don't want to have to hear ads about mattresses and stuff, that's why we do this. So you don't have to worry about that crap.
Scared those people away years ago.
I did. Because you know why? I got morals and I got a compass.
Yes, that's what it was.
Yeah, that's it.
Yes, it's because you're so punk rock.
Done in one. Nailed it.
Yeah. But here's the thing. Let's say you're one of those people that, I was like, funds are a little bit tight. I can't go over on Patreon. That's absolutely fine. If you can't do that, what we do ask you to do is go over to the iTunes and drop us a 5-star review, a.k.a. Humdinger.
Humdinger.
And we've got a new one, boys. It's entitled Great Podcast. It's from, this is a great username, PoohMan424231.
I love it, man. I love it that there's that many Pooh men out there.
And it reads as follows, 5 stars. I love these guys. Been listening for a while and didn't realize I never gave a 5-star review. Fun and informative. It's great to listen, and these guys have great banter. Living in Charlotte, I love to go see a movie with these guys sometimes. How about a beer and a movie meetup? Ooh, that might be sometime in the future. That's not a horrible idea. If you want to be like Pooh Man, hopefully he's not going to be bringing any poo to the party. Please don't do that. But if you bring your sunny disposition, we'll certainly do that and throw one up for you. So thank you for your 5-star review there. And if you too would like to give a 5-star review, we'd really appreciate that, and share it with a friend, man. That's how we make this stuff happen. Well, this week it's been a while since it's been out, but we wanted to give everybody a chance, a little time to check it all out. We're going to be talking about the entire first season of Locke and Key on Netflix. Here is the trailer.
Going to a new school, starting in the middle of the year. Sure, it might suck, but also it might not.
Stellar pep talk, Mom.
Yeah, wait, let me write that down.
I think we should hang out.
Really?
Why don't you come over after school?
To Key House, to the most haunted place in Madison.
I want to show you something.
Whoa, okay, what's going on here?
Your house is full of magical keys. Mm-hmm. Do you have, some proof? Oh, okay.
These keys are dangerous. We don't know what they unlock.
What do you suppose on the other side of this?
Nothing good. Do we really want to know?
You're queer. You have no idea what's coming.
Alrighty, that was the trailer for Locke and Key. Again, we're going to be talking about the entire season here, but before we get to our actual review, we need to find out a little bit about where this sucker came from. You know what time it is. Ooh, Long gestating process getting this bad boy to live action. Bruce, what do you got?
Locke and Key is one of the coolest comic maxi series ever. Written by Joe Hill and drawn by Gabriel Rodriguez, it was published by IDW from 2008 to 2013 for a total of 40 issues, including one-shots. The story features the Locke family and their mysterious and iconic colonial mansion known as the Key House. The story spans multiple centuries going back to the Revolutionary War, where a portal to another dimension populated by demons is discovered, and some idiot thought it'd be the perfect place to build a house. In the comics, it is a creepy, gothic New England town named Lovecraft, Massachusetts, and I wonder what are the chances that a town named Lovecraft would have the kind of existential horror elements that would make H.P. Lovecraft of Rhode Island such a star. If time moved in the surreal, non-linear fashion that it sometimes does in the Locke and Key comic, you could say Lovecraft was inspired by Joe Hill. But as the nature of reality is in our world, it's probably the other way around. And I'm saying this for completeness sake, because if I don't, someone will email me to point it out as if I didn't know. But Joe Hill is the son of Stephen King. I don't think that's super relevant, and nobody likes to be constantly identified as someone's son or brother or spouse, etc. I also think that Joe Hill's accomplishments are sufficient to justify him being known as his own man. But, another but here, he is kind of a chip off the old block. He sure does look like a middle-aged version of Stephen King. And I'm pretty sure Locke and Key doesn't exist in a world without Stephen King's It. But back to the story of Key House. Key House is a magical, mystical place, primarily due to the fact that it houses magical, mystical keys made of whisper metal. And what is whisper metal, you may ask? Well, as much as I love spoilers, I'm not going to tell you that. I want you to go read the comics for yourself on that one. The comics contain at least 28 known keys, and makes it clear that there are some keys that remain unknown even at the story's conclusion. These keys include some that we've seen in the Netflix series, like the Echo Key, which only works in the well house, the Anywhere Key that opens the door to anywhere the bearer can visualize in their mind, and the Gender Key, which is called the Identity Key in the show, which can change one's gender. There are also a multitude of keys we haven't seen on Netflix yet, like the Owl Key that gives the user control of a mechanical owl and clearly shows Joe Hill likes the original Clash of the Titans as much as I do, the Squirrel Key that controls squirrels, and the Philosophoscope Key that's most notable property is the fact that it's very difficult to pronounce. Oh, there's also the Bitey Key. The Bitey Key turns any doorway into a mouth with big teeth. I should also mention that Key House is under a spell which causes occupants to forget about the keys and the magic of the house when they pass their 18th birthday. At the 2019 San Diego Comic-Con, Joe Hill confirmed that a storyline called World War Key was in the works. The storyline, as Hill puts it, is about the idea that the past is never gone, and I think a lot of ghost stories are about the ways the past keep bleeding through to the present. We'll visit the Revolutionary War, Civil War, and World War II to show how those past events have lingering effects on our heroes today. As a big fan of these comics, I'm looking forward to World War Key, but if Netflix plans to adapt that one, they'll probably have to up the budget. Also, just last week, IDW announced that Locke and Key would be crossing over with DC Comics' Sandman universe. The story will center around DC's Key to Hell from the Sandman story arc Season of Mists. There's certainly no possible way that combining two things people really love could ever go wrong, right?
Have you had a Reese's Cup?
Delicious.
Pretty good.
In summary, this is one of those occasions that no matter how we end up feeling about the show, I absolutely want everyone to know that the comic is a verified, certified, undeniable, Dick Gunfighter approved Dick Grayson.
Well, and we'll talk about the show now. Sean, if memory serves, you are a gigantic Locke and Key fan. Am I correct in that remembrance?
No, it's the exact opposite. I've never read anything about it.
Maybe I guess it was Bruce I was thinking of, but I could have sworn that you would have.
Some clues in that comic connection.
I mean, I heard it. Obviously, you're a dork, Bruce. We all know this. I figure as much going in with you. Him, I thought I would have sworn up and down you would have read this one. Okay, cool.
No, I knew nothing about going into this Netflix series. So when Bruce was when he wasn't shuffling, he would do a lot. Like he would constantly talk about how Locke and Key is great, and he can't wait till it comes out on Netflix. And then it came out, and he was the only one of us who knew that it had come out. And he was like, immediately, we must see this thing. And so we did.
3 weeks later. We had other things. We had previous engagements, everybody, and we wanted to give everyone a shot. And Bruce said that we should definitely watch the entire season instead of having it like we have been doing with mini shows that come out on Netflix. So,
and he was right about that. I mean, let's be honest about that. And it was very cool that we were given enough time to be able to watch it where it's not just we have to puke it out in one evening.
Oh gosh, and yeah, there were so many times when you just think about like when we reviewed Daredevil, like first and second season, man. We just watched those. They came out on Friday, and by Sunday evening, we're like, we've just watched 78 hours worth of television, and here's what we can kind of remember from it.
Right.
And reviewing the first half of this show would be like reviewing the first half of The Crying Game. Like, it's a very different review than if you've seen the whole thing.
That's true. It gets to a very different spot if you're doing that. So, Bruce, you've gone through, you've read all the comics and stuff. I think you're the only one that we can kind of answer this basic question with here. How's the translation for you?
It's okay. It's not bad as a translation. With anything, you have to change things around when you adapt it.
Yeah.
Even though the comic finished its run only 7 years ago, there's just been enough changes in the fandom that they needed to make some significant changes. Like I think it kind of makes sense to me why in 2008, 2009, they called it the gender key. Now they call it the identity key. A lot of changes in how we use language regarding both gender and identity.
But even so, I think identity key is from a kind of literary standpoint, if you will, it reads better to me.
Yeah. And also they have brought in the character Gabriel that we're going to talk about. Gabriel's not in the comic, but there's a character who is in the comic that's not in the show, and Gabriel is kind of him, and it makes sense in the show because in the show, if you have the same actor playing two different characters, you're going to know right away, but in the comic, they do a better job of disguising some of that. So some of the changes absolutely make sense to me. Some of the changes, I don't know why they did it. Like that whole fire key is not in the comics that I can recall at all, but it's kind of a big part of the show. Mm-hmm. So there's some changes I don't understand as well. Like I feel like in the comic, they were in California before they moved east. In the show, they were in Seattle before some of those changes, I don't even know why they make that change. In the book, they moved to Lovecraft. In the show, they call it Matheson. I don't know why they make that change.
Richard Matheson, probably from Twilight Zone.
Yeah, instead of H.P. Lovecraft, Richard Matheson.
That's. I mean, honest to God, I think that's as best I got.
It's translated well, but as is the case with any really good comic, especially a comic that's dealing with some surreal things, you can just do more with a pencil and ink than you can do with a camera. So some parts of it just work better for me in the comic, which, it's how it should be. But I think they did a decent job. And they did a really cool thing where they've kind of told you the whole story in a smaller version, but they haven't told you the whole story. Like the ending here is like a 30% version of the main ending in the comic. So if they didn't get a second season, you'd feel like you got the full comic experience. But they've got stuff in the comic they can come back to for a bigger ending if it does go 3 seasons. So I like how they did that.
Feels like they're kind of doing it. Now, Sean, as a newbie to this as I was, how did you enjoy this series overall?
All right. I found it deadly boring. I realized that none of the horror elements are here, and that's really half of what makes the book so great. This is so boring. It is the actors that they have are uninteresting as these kids, except for the kid himself. Although he is not a very good actor yet, maybe he will be later. Kind of like your Hermione in Harry Potter's.
Mm-hmm. You're talking about Bodhi?
Yeah, the kid who plays Bodhi.
He was the first person cast too.
Oh, he was.
Yeah.
Well, if I'm not mistaken, isn't is Machete? Is he like producing this or something like that, or one of the producers from It?
No, not that I'm aware of.
Maybe I just was thinking something else. I don't know, but I think that kid. I think he's got like, if they can keep him in that voice, I think he could do voiceover stuff forever. Just cartoons left and right. He's just got the perfect cartoon voice.
Yeah, he's a very interesting kid also, but the problem is that he's just not very good at acting yet. Like maybe he'll learn it later. I found all of the CW stuff where they're in high school that can't possibly be in the comic books, or if it is, it's not nearly as much of it.
One thing I'm worried about with this is people won't like this very much, and because of that, they won't read the comic, and that's my biggest fear when a comic I really like gets adapted.
I will tell you that the actress who plays Echo, yowza.
How did I know? I know my man right there, boys.
Yep.
I know my man. I watch it and I'm just like, who I know enjoys this part of the aspect of the show.
Which 7 of your ex-girlfriends does she look most like? and she's also been in I think it was a Netflix show. It was either Hulu or Netflix, but a movie called In the Tall Grass, which is also a movie co-written by Joe Hill along with his father. So they've got people they've worked with here before. The kid Bodie was Georgie in It, in case you didn't recognize him. So
I did not recognize him.
Yeah, so this show's been a long time coming.
I know that they keep trying to make it. It was the original Why the Last Man, but the problem, like, I know it's difficult to do it correctly, but they should have waited a little longer. Like, it's not different enough from other things that are already on Netflix. You know what I mean? Like, Hulu, and done better.
Hulu started developing this 3 years ago with Scott Derrickson. Right. And I think Scott Derrickson would have been a nice touch to this, but he left when Hulu pulled the plug.
I mean, when you look at like Lemony Snicket is better than this is right now on Netflix. I know that Adam, you're not a huge fan of it. But
no, I mean, I like I watched the. Oh, what was the second bit? I'm sorry, I jumped the gun.
No, the Umbrella Academy. I know you weren't a big fan of that, but that's done better than this is.
And I think there's a little bit where, like, the success of Stranger Things and the success of It Chapter 1 always seem intertwined in my mind. Because of when they came out, they had some common cast, and it's kids in these creepy supernatural situations. And I think with Locke and Key, maybe they felt they needed to get this out there while people still kind of were into that before they passed through that phase. You know how you're trying to catch the tail end of a trend. And
I think that's
before we move on to the next thing.
I think that's a very astute observation. I mean, because Hollywood just does very much follow trends and stuff like that, and this very much falls into what's kind of been trending over the last couple of years. So yeah, I agree with that.
Yeah, and originally, totally. Universal wanted to make this a film trilogy back in 2014, and I really would have been down for that. But the problem with the film trilogy is if the first one doesn't light up the box office, then you don't get the second and third.
You tell that to Lord of the Rings. You do it all at one shot. You don't care.
Yeah.
And then
something tells me this wasn't going to be a Lord of the Rings endeavor.
What? Yeah, I will say this. I think you're absolutely correct. And a lot of the acting is kind of super strange to not very good. I think, and I'll be honest with you. I'll poo-poo a little bit, but ultimately, I think I like this show much more than you guys did.
I think I liked it. I understand where Sean is coming from, because I've already gotten input from other friends who told me there's not a single character in the show that they like. Like, maybe the closest is the girl that Tyler is kind of sort of trying to go out with or whatever. That maybe that character is not despicable, but they just hate every single person on the show, and it makes it hard to enjoy the show.
Yeah, she's not horrible yet, but like the mom, I just like, part of me goes like, I'm watching this in the beginning going like, this must be something that she's doing, like some sort of acting choice that she's making. And it almost gets weirder as things go on. And it just like, I'm like, what show are you on? Because I don't know that you're on this show. I think.
Is it wrong that I like her better when she falls off the wagon?
Oh, we were all super excited when she got drunk. Am I wrong? Because I was just like, oh, wow, she's like a normal person. She's like a reverse drunk. She gets drunk, and then she just becomes a regular, normal human being. We've all met those people. We all know the type of person that's just like, oh, you wouldn't drive in the car with them unless if they were sober. But if they're, a little messed up, you'll get in the car with them because, that calms them down.
I'm going to talk about the person who bothered me more than the mom, and that's Rendell, the cool dad.
Oh, my Lord.
I hate the cool dad and the cool teacher, and he's both in one.
He's got the, he's doing Christian Bale while looking like John Wick.
Man, I think he thinks he looks like Brad Cooper, though, when he's acting. And what makes it, this is where the translation hurts me, because in the comic, the dad is this no-nonsense guy with a buzz cut and kind of looks like, he just looks like the dad who's out in the garage building something all the time. And then they give us the cool dad in the show. And, as a real-life dad, I don't know how you feel about this, Sean, but as a real-life dad, sometimes the cool dad is so annoying. And the cool teacher is so annoying. Man.
You never, ever want to be cool dad in real life. Like, never, ever.
Well, I'm not worried about that. I just don't want to hang out with cool dad if I'm at a birthday party for the kids or something. They're the ones that annoy the heck out of you.
But
because those are also the ones who, you're worried about your kids around that guy later, like when they're teenagers.
Oh, yeah. And you certainly don't want that guy. You got American Beauty situation going on here.
So self-involved that even when they're doing something good for their kids, they're doing it so you will see them doing it for their kids. You know what I mean? It's like they're the dad equivalent of an Instagram influencer.
Yes.
But everywhere you look, he's like posting up or just kind of leaning back in like a really smart, sassy way. Just like, yeah, I'm about to rap to you kids, impart some awesome knowledge for you because I'm cool dad.
Man, he screams youth minister at a church that has electric guitars in the closet.
Yeah, let me turn this chair around.
For sure.
Uncle Don.
I'm a preacher in blue jeans, everybody.
Yeah.
So
go ahead.
Let me tell you something about Locke and Key. This is what bothers me the most about it, right? So, I know there's a horror aspect that was never brought to the Netflix show, right? But a couple of years ago, there was a sci-fi miniseries, and it's called The Lost Room. Do either of you guys know about it?
No, I don't.
Can't say that I do.
It is great. It is very, very good, and it's got Peter Krause and a couple other people in it. But Julianne Margulies is in it also, and it's about this guy who finds this room in a hotel that is supernatural in nature, and it is great, and it's like this little treasure that no one has ever seen. And I'm looking it up right now, which is why I'm talking so slow. It is actually on Amazon Prime right now. Ooh. You can watch it now if you want to. And it is so cool the way that they parse everything out and you figure everything out like by the end of it. And it's so well done and done for no money. And it is far superior in every way to this Netflix show. And that is what all I kept thinking about the entire time as I'm watching this thing. And I'm not entirely sure when Locke and Key came out.
2008, 2009 is when it started.
Okay. The first episode of The Lost Room came out in 2006.
Yep, I could see that.
And I hear that Joe Hill has at least basic cable. So he probably saw that.
Now, I'm going to tell you something. The show works for me because I know a lot of the backstory, too. And there's stuff that I'm understanding when I watch this that someone that's new to the show wouldn't understand. So I have a suspicion that maybe this show would have been more appealing to a broader audience, which, by the way, it's been top 10 on Netflix ever since it released. So people are watching it. I just don't know how well they like it. But I think they pushed the story further than it needed to go in season 1. And I kind of think it might have been more interesting for folks if instead of rushing the front story, they'd started to reveal a little bit of the backstory in season 1. Like help us understand where these keys came from and who made these keys. Like stuff that I know that I think would have made it a little more interesting if you're watching and suddenly you start to see where that's why that happened and stuff like that. And it's kind of ridiculous that the folks' last name is Locke and they live in Key House, but their descendant, the original person that they descended from, was a guy who was a locksmith, and it was the time when, if you were a cobbler, your last name was Cobbler. If you were a baker, so they called him Locke because he was a locksmith.
Yeah.
And he's who made the keys that led to his wealth to buy the house. So he called it Key House. So there's it's not just a corny fictional contrivance that the Locke family lives in the Key House. It all kind of makes sense. But they're descended from the man who first learned how to make these keys and how he made them. And it's pretty cool. And I think just a little bit of backstory element would have been interesting. But here we're seeing magic keys, and we just have to accept magic keys are there just because, like old school fantasy, when I think we've become kind of, as a viewing audience overall, sophisticated enough that we ask, why are magic keys there? So I think a little backstory and maybe don't take the front story so far would have made a better first season.
It might have.
Yeah, and I think that's one of the interesting things, and say what you will, but there's a lot of kind of hallmarks there of his father, so you can only start to make some of those comparisons and stuff. But one of the things that Stephen King is good at is kind of building that base with which to throw all of, evil and crap and just whatever else on top of. And you're absolutely right, Bruce, is that this, like within that first episode, we've already got a key, we got the well, everything is going on in here. We don't have enough time to understand and get to know who these characters are before all of the crazy stuff happens to them. And I know it's a show and you need to get things on the ball and running, but you got 10 episodes with which to do it. And I think you're right. I think we need to learn to trust audiences a little bit more. I mean, like when we're watching The Mandalorian, at first it was like, oh, all of these shows are slow and there's not too much stuff. And then when you realize, oh, that's why they're doing it on purpose, then it's fine. But you don't get that with this show.
And I feel like they made a show so that if they never get a season 2, they feel satisfied that they told a complete story. But I think if they had told less in season 1, it would have increased the chances of a satisfying season 2. But it's getting watched a lot, so maybe it's going to get a season 2, and maybe we'll finally get some of that backstory. I just think Sean, in particular, I think you might have enjoyed it a little more if they do explain some of the horror elements about what's going on, other than just for some reason there's a door and bullets shoot out of it.
Yeah, I absolutely would have. I mean, more of the family, even less of the high school stuff. Like, I don't care about the movie that they're trying to make. That's all garbage. It's not interesting.
Because, Echo in the comic spends like 6 issues trapped in the well house, and it's just so creepy, and you don't know what Echo is or who Echo is, and it just really has more of a horror feel to it, whereas here she gets that anywhere key and she's out in a disco.
About 38 minutes into the show, first episode, she's out of that well and rearing to go.
And
she's banging and killing.
Yeah, something about seeing her go straight to the European discotheque takes the horror away from that monster,
Yeah, but I mean, at the same time, too, I did kind of like just going from place to place, and here's the fancy clothes that I'm stealing, here's the necklace that I'm stealing. Then you go to the I don't know why you go to the party, but you go to a party as a demon. Maybe that's just something you do.
Like she goes and she kills the guy. There's never any if you're showing something on screen, I kind of feel like there needs to be a reason for it. Did she take something from the guy? Did he have something she needed to forward her own story? I mean, we don't go on side quests in a limited series like this. This isn't like it's 26 episodes. They got to fill it. Like, instead of having her go to Europe and strangle a guy for apparently no reason, how about we use that time to do something more story building, because there's a lot of story left unbuilt here by the end.
She wants to dance and look fabulous. Why are you trying to take that away from her, Bruce?
Or take it away from me? Why are you trying to take that away from me, Bruce?
It was totally unnecessary for her to be walking around in those scanty underwear.
You could watch that lady eat salad.
Well, you get to see her eat a lot of pancakes.
Oh, I'm sorry. That's something like, is that a thing for anybody else? I don't know why, but like skinny hot chicks eating stuff. Why is that? Why do I enjoy watching that? Why do it's just like, oh, she's eating stuff? I don't know.
I mean, you think if she'll eat all that, she'll. I'm not going to finish that sentence. It's PG.
Lord,
do you guys know who the showrunner is on this?
No.
Carlton Cuse. Does that name ring any bells? Because he has a really interesting resume.
Wasn't he a Pro Bowler at some point? Sounds like a Pro Bowler name.
No, that was Sweet Chauncey.
Oh, yeah.
Carlton Cuse worked on 3 awesome shows that you and I both like, Adam. I don't know how you come down on this, Sean. But Briscoe County Jr., Nash Bridges, and Martial Law. That's the DNA coming into the show.
Well, martial law, yes.
Sammo Hung was an awesome man.
Well,
I like Briscoe County Jr.
Yeah. Everybody likes that one.
But yeah, some interesting DNA coming into this to have the Briscoe County Jr., Nash Bridges, Martial Law pedigree as the showrunner.
Boy, one thing that kind of got me about this show, like, and you see it, it's got to be like first episode, second episode at the most, but probably first episode, where you getting in with Scott with one T, and he's talking about his big crew that he calls the Savinis, and he's like, and like, okay, she doesn't know who that is.
I want to hear your take on the Savini squad, because of the 3 of us, Adam, I think you're most likely to have been in a Savini squad in high school.
I wish I had friends that were that cool. We were all way dorkier than that. But my thing is this, and I'm just going, and he goes, the godfather of splatter and special effects. I'm like, no, that's Dick Smith, who worked under Dick Smith and learned his trade from him, Tom Savini. All right? So if you want to talk about godfathers of stuff, Dick Smith's the way that you go, not Tom Savini. And then when Tom Savini shows up in a cameo, it's like, oh, it all makes sense now, doesn't it?
Oh, I didn't know he was in a cameo.
Yeah, he's the guy at the store there that gives him the jar keys.
Oh, I didn't know that.
That's Tom Savini.
See, I was thinking, what's Mira Savini's father?
Are you thinking of
Bruce?
Paul Sorvino?
You're hearing at your door right now. That is the comedy police. You need to let them in.
Oh, okay. But
Paul Sorvino is here to break your kneecaps.
Yeah, Paul Sorvino. That's what I'm thinking of. Okay. But you made movies in high school, right? You tried to do this sort of thing.
Oh, well, yeah, we did some pretty terrible things, like a lot of great in-camera edits and stuff like that. Yeah, we did some of that.
But
we made a series of what I wish they were somewhere. They're gone from existence, I'm sure. But we made 2 like what I would call pretty decent little Mission Impossible ripoffs that were like super fun. Like we went to a hospital at one point because we knew that, hey, it's a big giant building and we can kind of shoot and stuff, and like there's elevators there. We just told them we were with a church group and they let us do whatever we want. I was walking around in a briefcase with sunglasses on. They didn't know what was up. Boy, I'd get in big time trouble today.
Though? You never try to make a horror movie, slasher movie, monster movie?
No, because again, that stuff takes a little bit of money for like, for blood and all that kind of stuff. And honestly, I was never really a giant horror guy growing up. I only really got into horror and stuff till I was like, 18, 19 years old.
Okay, so here, just quick question for you, Sean. With your experience with insurance adjusting, sometimes you have to insure movie productions. Which do you think has a bigger budget? Your average horror movie or your average Mission Impossible movie that Adam thought he could afford to make instead of a horror movie?
I sold that with my performance.
Hold on a second, because we're burying the lead here. Adam, what was the name of your Mission Impossible ripoff?
Oh, I think we just called it. Did we ever even have a title? We did have I did eventually edit in some Mission Impossible music from the first album, for the first original.
Yeah, with all the good music. The one with all the great music.
Exactly, the good one. I don't know, because we didn't have the ability to make titles that we never really titled anything.
It's not like when I made my homebrew movie Man from Aunt. It was kind of like Man from Uncle.
Man from Auntie.
Did you appreciate Joe Hill's cameo?
Oh, that I did. I did enjoy the Joe Hill cameo. I'm like, oh, look, they got him in there at the last second for, what was it? It had to be like last episode, right?
It was next to last or last.
Something like that.
EMS guy with the but come on, 80% of people that see that cameo, your first response isn't, wow, Joe Hill's in the movie. Your first response is, wow, he keeps looking more and more like his father.
Yeah, he doesn't do himself any favors with that face. He looks exactly like him.
The beard, he has control over that beard, and he chooses to keep it, so it's on him.
He has control over the beard.
I know I do that whenever when I shave. I just go like, "This is me. I'm doing this. I have the power."
You know what? I do. There is one thing. If we can get off of if we can get back onto the topic of this 10 episode thing. And then get immediately back off of it because it's so boring to talk about. But the stuff in their minds.
Oh, you and I are in the same link, man. Because that was the next thing I was going to. Woo!
The head key. Are we talking about the head
that
key?
part is really well done in this show.
Yeah. Like from and I love the idea too with the because I didn't get it at first, and this is a storytelling thing that I enjoyed them doing, where he had the key and he's up against he sees the back of Savini's neck and it starts to have a key and he's like, wait a minute, what the heck is this? And then eventually figures out that they could all do it. I thought that was a cool way to have that spring about.
What did you think about the ghost key? That was something I really liked in the comic, and I was glad it showed up in the show. Because, there are a lot of keys that don't show up in the show. Did you like that ghost key effect at all?
A lot of nice elements. I mean, and again, this is something that I think you're right, they needed more of. Because when he goes and talks to, Grandpa Ghost down there or whatever, you're getting story. You're getting a little bit more interested in what's going on. And I think they almost needed that, something like that a little bit more to, flesh stuff out for you a bit.
And then, one of the big twists that's really cool in the comic when it comes across is the reveal of who Echo really is. Were you guys, did you see that coming? Were you caught off guard? How did you feel about the reveal on who Echo really is?
I honestly, I liked all of those. I mean, I liked the double backs and the, hey, we have an ability. Now, granted, in season 2, I'm going to just think everybody is, using that face key because you can really only do that trick once. And then everyone's just going to be like, oh, I know how this has worked. So it was good this time. I don't know how well that's going to survive over another season.
And you know how they cast the actor Lucas, the actor that played Lucas. And I think he looked convincingly like this is the male equivalent of Echo. In the comic, it doesn't change your identity. It just changes your gender, but you still kind of look similar.
Oh, okay.
So that means you can't stretch it as far in the comic as you can here, where it's just a straight-up shapeshifter key. But I really like that reveal, and something I don't remember from the comic that was in the show. I'm watching this with people that don't know the comic when I'm watching it the first time through. But when Tyler is doing the stuff in the car with Echo, and the whole time I know it's his dead dad's best friend from high school, I'm getting a kick out of watching that. Wait until he figures out what happened.
Bruce is just like, little do you know. What did you want? The end scene from Ace Ventura to happen at the end of this? Is that
no, not quite. I just liked watching that, knowing where it was going to go, and nobody else knew.
Little Finkel is Einhorn over here with this shape shifting.
But once Lucas showed up, did it start to click how similar he looked to the actress that plays Dodge, Sean?
Well, Einhorn is Finkel.
And Finkel is Einhorn. Yeah, I mean, it's called simple science.
Laces out.
But does anyone? I'll be honest with you guys. If there was a head key, I wouldn't let anybody through those doors. I don't know what's back there.
Oh,
these people are letting out. Now, fine. The child is one thing because he's like a 9-year-old kid. Their minds can only go so far, and that's exactly what you'd expect to see in a 9-year-old's head. But you're a teenage boy. I'm telling you, if Tyler ever goes up in there, you don't go into Tyler's room. Don't go into his head. You don't want to. You don't want to be there.
Here's something else too about the head key. I picture it as some kind of metaphysical going into another dimension where you can kind of manipulate your thoughts. But no, it's very practical because the dad puts the key inside his head with the head key, and then it's Like, suppose he went to get an MRI and nobody knew that key was in there. Is it just going to, like, rip it out of his head and cause his head to explode? Like, the idea that he actually walked around with a physical key inside his head that was still there after he was cremated, like, I think it should have been more like a pocket dimension kind of situation.
Yeah, especially when when the coroners finish out, charring you up and everything, they shake it out like they're painting for gold.
Plus, by this strategy that we're seeing here, or this kind of rule of how it functions, like, there is a pretty good-sized library book physically lodged in Tyler's head.
Yeah, I did. I thought that was kind of a cool aspect and everything, like him just being able to throw books and stuff in and get that knowledge. And I was just like, oh, Jesus, what I wouldn't give for some of that action. Just be like, hey, oh, no, I know this.
Hey, Sean, imagine if instead of watching these 10 episodes, you could have, like, thrown a burned copy on a DVD into your head and not have to watch it and know everything.
That would be great.
Talk about 10 hours saved.
Uh-huh.
What'd you think about Kinsey taking her fright out of her head? And the best I know is, like, at the end of this season, that fear monster's still, like, running around loose out in the woods, right? Like, they never did anything with
Yeah,
it.
they didn't tie up that loose end, but I thought that was an interesting element of her going through, taking her fear out, burying that fear, and then ultimately her character does change. She becomes this kind of fearless thing and just doesn't really care about, necessarily the consequences, but she seems just more like kind of a level-headed person and just goes like, no, I know exactly how this is all going to work. Everything's going to be fine. Let's just do this. I thought that was pretty cool.
And there's also that really cool thing where, the school bully recognizes her, like the fear of her, and is like, she didn't do her hair or anything, and she was staring in the window, and like that part is really neat about it. But it just didn't do anything. It didn't go anywhere past that. And I thought that was a really good turn. Like that is basically what this show reminds me of, is that the show is a bunch of half measures. Like they don't fully go for it. It's like, well, it's kind of like the book. It's kind of, like everything is like just half measures of everything.
And like the key that they put into the tree that brings up the jars that has the uncle's memories in it, like that key doesn't exist in the comic at all. And also, that's like a super specific key for somebody to go to the trouble of making with this incredibly rare substance.
Nice.
Like, we really need, like, instead of just digging a hole and burying the jars, we're going to make a magic key to bury jars.
Listen, this one key to rule them all. Wait a minute, that's a different program.
But,
okay, let's wrap it up.
Yes.
All right, so. But overall, I would say that, to me, this was fairly enjoyable. There's a lot of Netflix stuff that when it comes down the line just feels like utter pulling teeth. While this may not have been the funnest thing in the world, there's a lot of, we'll be charitable and say interesting acting choices being made. I didn't hate it. It felt enough kind of like Stephen King-y sort of stuff to where I was okay with it.
Yeah, I mean, I liked it better than Sean for sure. Not quite sure where you come down on it, Adam, but yeah, I agree.
And so overall, Sean, just a big kind of
Yeah, I mean, for me, it's like there's aspects to it that could be good. They just don't go all the way with it. Like, for instance, like here's another thing about it, is that the production design of the house is incredible. Mm-hmm. There's a lot going on in that house, and it's layered, and it's really well done. However, anything outside of that house is kind of slipshod, not really dressed in. And so it's this weird thing where, like, you go into the house and you're like, man, like, how much time did they spend on that? That's amazing. And then the school looks like they spent 15 minutes before they set up a camera to go shoot there.
Yeah.
It's very, very strange to me.
It's a hardware store. Throw up a couple lights. Boom, we're done.
And there's some keys in the comics they didn't bring in. I'm curious. Like, there's a key called the Hercules key. That if you use that key, it makes you super strong.
Hercules.
And they use that to fight off some of the bad guys at one point. There's a key that actually makes you into a giant. Would you have enjoyed this more if they showed us some more of those far out there keys, or do you think there were too many keys as it was? What do you think about that, Sean?
No. Like, look, that would be fine. I want them to choose a side. I think is my biggest problem with this. Is that like they want to be everything to all people, and that is clearly not what the source material is. Like what the source material seems to me, and maybe I'm wrong. It's a horror suspense thriller. Am I right?
Yeah, I think you're right.
It's not what this show is.
Yeah, and the comic is a little bit of a history lesson and a history of how the keys are made and how this all happened.
That sounds way cooler.
Yeah.
Like, that's a way better thing.
You shouldn't finish the first season saying, well, I think I know what they're going to do in season 2, and it's going to be really good. Like, you should finish the first season wanting more of that, not like, okay, I can't wait for the better next season.
Yeah.
And you really want to end like The Mandalorian did. Is that where you're like, oh, man, I can't believe it's over already.
I'll tell you something else I'm real curious about, though. Is there any possible way this might relate to Sylvester Stallone?
Listen, Bruce, there's no way that's even possible. This is a Netflix show with only 10 episodes. There's no way it can connect to Sylvester Stallone. No way.
Oh, well, thank you, Adam and Bruce. I have a prepared statement. This one took me a while to find. Matt Dunkley is the conductor of music for Locke and Key, and he also worked on Driven, a movie that was both written and directed by Sylvester Stallone. But what I like to talk about this week is another project that Mark Dunkley had worked on, and it's something that we'll never get the opportunity to speak about again. So, like years ago on Preacher Podcast, we got the chance to talk about a movie called Fart the Movie. And it was the greatest thing that's ever happened to any of us. So today, while we can, we're going to talk about a made-for-TV movie called The Fattest Man in Britain. I'd never heard anything about The Fattest Man in Britain, but you don't need to be Horatio Caine to figure out the context clues as to what this TV movie could possibly be about. Yeah. And it turns out this movie has a bevy of British TV stars in it, which I find particularly charming, because whenever I hear someone from England say something like, it stars the always great Bobby Ball and Brendan O'Carroll, my American brain tries to place those two people, but it can't, because when you look him up, his resume has TV show names like Cannon and Ball and the Cockfields, which I hope is about some type of farmers, but I'll never know because we won't ever see that here. Now, Timothy Spall also plays in this movie, and he is actually the fattest man in Britain, whom American audiences might know as Wormtail from Harry Potter or Winston Churchill from The King's Speech. And if you haven't, totally go see The King's Speech. It's a great movie. I know it sounds weird to be promoting a high-minded drama in the middle of a joke that's speaking exclusively about a movie called The Fattest Man in Britain, but just go with me here. Just go with me. After doing some half-measured, do the research, but not really, I found The Fattest Man in Britain is exactly what you think it is. A movie where you feel bad for the big fat guy, and there's a storyline that asks the question, will he lose that weight? But for the most part, it's a movie to trap people with mean senses of humor into feeling for people they would normally make fun of. And the tradition of movies like Stuck on You, The Ringer, or Shallow Hal. This week, I'm going to end the Stallone connection by saying it's never okay to make fun of fat people unless they're total douchebags who don't see themselves as fat and is currently the president of the United States of America. But
not fat, not fat at all.
Our new podcast, America 30 Questions. And there you have it, ding-a-lingers. This week's Stallone connection is conductor Matt Dunkley. I'm Sean Kovacs. And you are welcome.
His friends call him Dunky. All right, now let's get down to it. Our final ratings here for the first season of Locke and Key, of course, is from our Robin rating system. You can check that out at facebook.com/HeroMoviePodcast. It's at the top of the screen. Bruce, where does the first season of Locke and Key fall on the Robin rating system for you?
When you really, really love a comic book, like absolutely love it, and it's adapted, and it's not quite the same as the comic, it can go a couple of different ways. You can be the stereotypical hater that, in the comic, Batman had, he was 5'9", here he's 5'10", stuff like that. You can really nitpick and be the negative guy. But then there's also that effect that came over all of us when episode 1 came out, where you go and see it and you're like, yeah, that was good, right? Like, that was good, right? And I feel like maybe I'm a little bit of such a fan here. I'm going to like it no matter what they gave me. Also, I got to factor in, I've kind of done the supplemental reading. You really shouldn't have to do homework to enjoy a show.
Amen.
But I have done that homework. So I like it. I like it. I mean, I like it. Tim Drake territory like it, which is going to be the outlier here, I think. But I like it. And most importantly, I don't want people who don't like the show to think that they shouldn't read the comic. Go read the comic, people.
That's fair. Sean, what do you got?
I don't really like this thing. I'm going to give it a high Stephanie, just because it's not the worst thing we've ever seen by a long shot. It's just not all that great.
Yeah, no, I can definitely see both points. I'm gonna go. It's a light Tim Drake for me. It's good. It's not amazing. I think if I knew the source material, it might stray me a little bit more towards the negative. But for what it is and the audience that it's clearly trying to go to via obviously Netflix, and it's in that nice kind of TV 14 range where, that's who kind of they expect to watch this is high schoolers and stuff like that. And I think high schoolers by and large, if you're not into, super scary stuff, this will be fine for you. It's good enough. And I'm interested enough for a season 2, but again, and I didn't even think about this until just now, is that what's his nose there can age out of this role rather quickly if you're not careful. I mean, he's already starting to look, much older than he did in, It and all that kind of stuff. And unless they're feeding that kid a steady diet of coffee and cigarettes, I think he's going to grow up.
Yeah, I think
and
so.
Maybe not be so cute anymore. So, I mean, that's how it happens to a lot of kids. So,
Yeah, Carl from Walking Dead. It's going to happen real fast here.
Sorry, Carl, you got to get a bullet to the brain. And that's, I don't know that's how that show ends. I stopped watching a long time before that. We haven't discussed what we're doing next week because we totally forgot to before this recording and everything. So we'll come up with that in the post show. You know who's going to find out about it first? People that support us over at patreon.com/HMP. That's right. Those people have advantages over you fine normal folks. But come on. Bruce, where can we find more of your work on the internet?
I just want to remind people that Heroes and Villains podcast is still out there. So go check for Heroes and Villains podcast. A lot of back episodes about cool comic book characters. But more importantly, there are 6 episodes telling everyone the story of Nerdspawn Genesis. The absolutely 100% not quite true story of how Sean, Bruce, and Adam fought bad guys and stuff with a superhero kid named Lil Still helping him out.
I say put it on your phone there and have Bruce tell you a story before you go to sleep. Just like Uncle Brucey's tucking you in. I like that idea.
You'll go to sleep quicker than usual.
Yeah, you'll be right out faster than Ambien. I'll tell you that right now. Sean, if what do you think if people had 30 questions? What do you think they should do with 30 questions on their hands? Could you put it to just any old thing? Or would you have a more focused laser?
I would really love it if you would go to Clone Wars 30 questions. We have a new episode for each new episode that comes out for season 7 on Disney Plus. It is, even if you don't watch the show, the questions are really turning out to be great where you don't even have to watch the dang show. We would love it if you would listen to it.
No, exactly, and I think that's half the fun of it. And we had people like that with Preacher, which was really odd. People were like, "I don't watch the show. I've never read the books, but I enjoy listening to your show." And I'm like, "I don't understand what planet you're from, but thank you."
Hey, the best was the person said, "I don't watch the show, I haven't read the book, and I don't listen to your podcast. I just like to send you email."
I'm a compulsive email sender. I just like letting people know that I'm around, not listening to you, but around in general. So check all that out wherever you find finer podcasts, and we'll see you next week when we talk about something surely, utterly amazing. For Sweet Chauncey from the internet, Bruce Leslie. My name's Adam Portrais. Stay super, everybody.
Bye, Marty and Evie.